A warm welcome to this presentation, and thank you for joining. We will have a presentation by Magle Chemoswed and their full year report for the year 2020. The company today will be represented by CEO Justin Pearce and by CFO Petra Jönsson Sjölin. The moderator today, myself, is Alf Riple from Västra Hamnen Corporate Finance, and we have the pleasure of hosting this as we cover Magle with our commissioned research service. We will have a presentation first of all, and after that we will have a Q&A. You are encouraged to write questions. There's a control that looks like a talk bubble where you can expand, and that says questions. You can write your questions there. We will read them out and the company will answer. This session is being recorded, and the recording will later be found on Västra Hamnen Corporate Finance YouTube channel and on Magle Chemoswed's homepage. So with that, I will leave the word to you, Justin and Petra.
Alf, thank you very much, and a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us this morning. This is our first broadcast, so we hope it goes well. So let me start by saying that 2020 has been, without a doubt, one of the most challenging years that we have faced, and I don't think we're alone in that facing of challenges. Obviously with COVID and the ongoing pandemic, we have had numerous challenges across the business. I am happy to report, however, that despite these challenges, we've had a very strong 2020. We've seen growth across the business, and we've seen growing demand for the services that we're offering in the company, as well as on our technology products. So overall, the year for us has been a good year despite the challenges. And like I said, the uptick in demand for the products and services is reflected in the final result for the year. So overall, I think from a company perspective, we're very pleased with the performance. And we also had a lot of additional costs related to the initial public offering that we did in June of that year. So despite all of these, we still managed to finish the year on a positive note. In terms of operations, on the manufacturing side, for the full year 2020, we did have a decrease in our manufacturing revenues of around 27%. This was largely expected and was due to a decision to remove one of our active ingredients from the market. And the driver behind that was predominantly lower customer demand, but also that the margin on that product wasn't where we wanted it to be. So this had a top line revenue impact of around 10 million on the company, and it's been replaced largely by our own technology products coming into manufacturing. So we would expect that uptick to happen again for us in 2021. The other was expected as our development projects on the CDMO side go through sort of hills and valleys. In one year, we will have very high demand for some of our projects to manufacture clinical trial material. And then in the following year, we may have a slowdown in that demand as the clinical trials and studies are ongoing. So we sort of have that wave effect. So in 2019, in Q4 2019, we had a large manufacturing order for clinical trial materials. And in 2021, we have the same demand now in Q1. So these were expected. Overall, I think the revenue of just over 50 million in the manufacturing segment for us was a good return and was in line with our expectations, even with the demands that we had of COVID. Moving on to services, these are our CDMO services. So these are services that we provide to third-party customers. And you can see that we've had massive demand in relation to that area. We've brought in 4 new projects into the business in 2020, and those are early stage projects. So we expect those projects to be with us for the next 2 to 3 years. And the overall revenue in the year was significantly higher for us, of roughly 55 million. So we've really pushed the development services. This has also been aided by our early investments in 2018 and 2019. So the new instrumentation laboratories and services that we provide have started picking up and generating those revenues. The other thing to point out here is the late acquisition of Adroit Science. AB in December 2019. We saw the full effect of them coming into our service revenues in 2020. So that business has performed very well and in accordance with our expectations, as well as our integration plan into our overall service offering. As you all know, we receive a royalty which is paid quarterly to us. This is based on an out-licensing agreement with Becton Dickinson, where we out-license part of our technology platform for the sale of their product, Arista, which is a surgical hemostat. And in the period of October to December, so Q4 for 2020, we received about a 6 million royalty, which was in line with forecast. Of course, it's significantly lower to the same period the year before. But in 2019, we also had a slower royalty in the 2 quarters prior to that. So the 24.2 million in Q4 2019 was an unexpected peak in the revenue sale. Without a doubt, the revenue from Becton Dickinson has been affected by COVID, as hospitals around the world, especially in the US and Europe, are on lockdown. These sorts of surgical procedures, non-essential surgical procedures, are slowing down. And as a result of that slowdown, we also see that the royalty was slightly less than we had expected, still higher than the previous year. So we came in at 30.9 million, with the previous year at 29 million. And also one thing to point out here, the royalty is paid to us in USD. So we also had some currency fluctuations early on in the year, the USD was trading at a higher value than it was towards the end of the year. So overall, we think we have a good relationship with Becton Dickinson. The product that we are out-licensing continues to perform, and we're quite satisfied with where the royalty ended for 2020 in the circumstances of COVID. So overall, I think operationally we had a good year. We certainly strengthened the areas that we wanted to around the CDMO services. We pushed those through quite hard, and we've seen good customer uptake and good returns from that area of the business. Manufacturing continues to perform in a stable way, and we have new products coming into manufacturing, and now in 2021 on the clinical supply basis. In relation to our own pipeline and our own pipeline development, without a doubt, we had some setbacks as a result of COVID. So we had some slowdown in where we wanted to be in our pipeline. But overall, towards the end of Q3 and beginning of Q4, we managed to pick up the pace again, and we have ended the year pretty much on target to where we wanted to be. So the 3 products that we're currently spending most of our time in development are the Pharmacept M, which is a microsphere, which will come into the Pharmacept stable once we finish the acquisition of Pharmacept. And this is indicated for the embolization of benign prostate hyperplasias. And then we have Pharmacept L, which is for the embolization of uterine fibroids. And then we have SmartBone, which is a bone repair matrix based on our technology, which is currently under patent drafting, but is also at the same time in parallel to that patent drafting, moving into the phase 3 of the design and development phases for that product. So with Pharmacept M, we're fairly close now to the design validations. This is the last stage for us to have the device completely ready for filing, for regulatory filing. And we expect that to happen before the end of Q2 2021. And likewise with Pharmacept L, we expect that to follow shortly after Pharmacept M. SmartBone is a little further out, and we would expect at the earliest towards the end of 2021 for us to be moving into the design validation phase, and we expect that project to run through until 2022. So overall, our pipeline continues to demonstrate strength. The Smart Gel and the Smart Pan products that we had previously filed received CE marking early 2021, so we're very proud of that. And we pushed those products through relatively fast, and we will start working into those products as well. So overall, I think the technology side of the business is starting to really perform as we had hoped and expected as part of our strategy. And at the same time, the other segments in the business continue to develop in the way that we would have expected them to do. So overall, we're very proud of the year and the performance of 2020. And you know, it's an exceptional year for us, and we have an incredibly motivated and skilled staff base who have really helped pull together so that we could get through the COVID difficulties that we had in the year. So with that said, I will pass the financial side on to Petra and let her run through the figures.
All right. So hopefully all of you will read our full financial report. So I want to look at the highlights and making sure that I pinpoint the things that we believe is important. So as we're looking at the net sales has a growth between quarter four 2020 and quarter four 2019. We have a growth of 8%. But it's a slow but good growth. And if you look at the full year between 2020 and 2019, we have a growth of 12%. So growing steady, and even though we, as Jönsson described earlier on, of the changes that we have and the COVID situation. So this is a good outcome. Also, the operating profit still remains stable, growing as well, as you can see through compared to last year's numbers being 2019. And also what I wanted to highlight is the earnings per share. So as you can see, 2020 looks a lot lower than 2019, and this is due to a split share that was done in 2020, this 27th of March. So before we had 500 shares, which was then split into 10 million shares. This is the reason why you see a big gap in between the two years. Also, what is interesting is showing the equity ratio. So the equity ratio is growing, it's becoming more stable. Looking at that is due to, of course, more equity in our balance sheet, but also controlling our balance sheet on different levels. I will go into that for next coming slides. We have the income statement. As explained before, our net sales is all the topics that Justin described before. We have, of course, other revenues, which is impacting our full year total revenue. This is partly is currency effect that was mentioned before, but also we have a shortened working time and some other cost that comes in, or income coming in through that channels. The raw material still similar to last year. We have a bit higher costs. Due also some raw materials are a bit more expensive this year due to the lack of what is it called? The lack of getting the supplier to deliver on time, and also having the shortage of material. We look at the personnel cost is in line with our expectations, but we also see that the personnel cost is due to the shortened working time as well, because that's taken up as revenue and not lowering the cost of the personnel cost. Financial income and others are in line with our expectations, and we are reporting as IFRS 16, as you all know. So moving over to the balance sheet, as you can see, there is some changes in the inventory. So we have made fully implemented a new inventory calculation, which enables more traceability and more transparency. This has a positive impact on the balance sheet. We have made some additional invoicing for the fourth quarter, which then gives us also a larger trade receivable than previous year. What we can also look at is the other operating liabilities. As you can see, it has decreased quite substantially. And this is also from our side to be able to control the balance sheet and making sure that everything is in line, and we have a full visibility on our balance sheet. So I feel very proud and positive of the team that has worked really hard to make a big effort to control it. And then we move over to the cash flow statement. As you can see, we have the quarterly reports in comparison, of course, with the full year as well. We have slight changes in the depreciation compared. We have some activated intangible asset that we have activated during the last quarter. We have also, of course, that impacts on the changes of working capital as well. We have some other investment activities done during the fourth quarter, as well as the full year if you compare it to previous year. We continue to have a stable cash flow moving forward, and we don't see any concerns of moving forward with this cash flow.
But I mean, just to wrap it up, like I said, we're very proud of the year. We've worked hard both operationally and financially. We want to stabilize the business and to make sure that our cash reserves and our operating ability is not impaired by the ongoing COVID situation. And I think we have very successfully navigated that over the year. And we have a good basis and a strong foundation for us now to launch into 2021. We have, like I said, a very strong and dedicated staff base who are helping us to drive that. So we're happy with the outlook, and we look forward to presenting further good news throughout 2021. Alf, I think we can pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Yeah, I want to remind everybody that you can ask questions. There's a talk bubble icon that you can expand and says questions, and you can write your questions there. We will read them out. In the meantime, I thought I'd ask you, you commented in report and also in your presentation that there has been some supply disruptions and price increases for some critical raw materials. Is this still a problem moving into 2021, or is it behind you now?
There are certain solvents, certain things that are critical to our business that are, of course, in high demand as a result of COVID, especially when it comes to the likes of the ethanols and the other alcohol-based solvents that we use for obvious reasons. We have negotiated very hard with our suppliers to make sure that we have certainty of supply. So from a supply perspective, we don't expect any disruption. From a cost perspective, there is always a possibility that we are forced into raising or paying a slightly higher cost on that. But for now, we've done what we can from a contractual basis to tie down on suppliers. So we don't expect there to be disruption from supply. And right now, the costs seem to be fairly stable.
Okay. I have looked closely at your segment reporting, and it's a very obvious trend towards a bigger share of development income and less in manufacturing. And you mentioned that you've taken on quite a few new development customers that I think you said you expect to retain those for the next 2-3 years. Was that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're one vaccine project that we have, so it's a biologic drug, and then the rest are small molecules and normal pharmaceuticals. And obviously, the development and the scale up of these products is usually a 2 to 8 year cycle. So the companies that we're working with have their own secure funding for the full development. So we expect those projects to remain with us now moving forward.
And your pipeline is often such that if a customer comes in through the development part of your business, they often stay also for the manufacturing part. Now, is this how should this be interpreted? The high number of customers, high volume in development, does that mean that you expect to get a higher volume in manufacturing later on? Or is it on the contrary, so that the manufacturing and development compete for the same resources in-house, so that now that you have a lot of development work, you can't take on as much manufacturing in the short run?
No, they don't compete with each other at all. The train is usually from development, we move the product into manufacturing. So this is handled by different teams. So we don't expect there to be any sort of competition for the resources. What we do encounter is two products who may want material at the same time, competing for different parts of our manufacturing lines. And that's a little bit more down to business development and just discussion with the customer in terms of how we fit everybody in and how we sell the manufacturing slots in a good way. But the projects that we currently have now are fairly well spaced across our facilities. So we feel that we have the capacities to support them all if they are successful and move into manufacturing with us.
But do you have slack in manufacturing now? I mean, there's a quite substantial decrease in revenue from Q4 last year in manufacturing. And I'm thinking also forward, you're going to start marketing your own proprietary products later this year. Is there available resources to produce those, or will that cannibalize on your contract manufacturing?
No. So we have the resources, we have the capacities, predominantly driven by the investments we took 2018, 2019. So we have the folks and scope in order to support both sides of the business.
Okay. Speaking of development projects, two of your products, Smart Pan and Smart Gel, both received a CE mark in January this year. When do you expect to close your first sale, and what sort of process is it from here until you start selling? Is there a marketing efforts or recruitment needs, or?
Yeah, there are two things that I would highlight. I mean, the CE mark of a medical device is stage one. The second stage on this is getting all the reimbursement codes in our territories done. So especially within Europe, the member states have a different reimbursement system, so we need to go through those reimbursement systems. And then there's a marketing side to this as well, where we need to get the physician or the doctor, the end user of that product, also to take it on and to start working with it. So when it comes to Smart Pan, we will probably carry out a small marketing study in Germany. That's a human study as a certified product. And at the same time, as Smart Pan is a first-in-class product, we are having a lot of discussion currently with the authorities in terms of where that should be positioned from a reimbursement perspective. And so with Smart Pan, we have a sort of stepwise approach, a slower approach into the market to make sure that the pricing position that we end up with is the right position, rather than trying to rush it, get a lower pricing point on it, and then in a couple of months have to go back to the authorities and generate another discussion with them to try and get the pricing increased. So it's important that we take the time now over the next couple of quarters to make sure that we get the right reimbursement codes in the right hospitals, so that we can maximize the revenues for those products.
But I can imagine that specialists in pancreatic surgery, that's a much more concentrated market than wound treatment. So I mean, I expect that, or I speculate that once you get in contact with this market, you can talk to them all at once, more or less, and then get a faster rollout than you would in a more dispersed market.
Yeah, on the surgical side, everybody is trying to cut off our hands to get the device. So there's an uptake in wanting to use it. So this isn't our concern. Our concern is making sure that the doctors wanting to use it is one half of the coin. The other half of the coin is getting the payer, the hospital administrator, and the financial folks to see the value in using the device. So there are two sides to persuading them in terms of what the device should sell at. So while we have the demand from the doctor side, we also need to have the right conversations on the administrative side to make sure that we get the right value in the product.
About your other development projects, you said before you had an ambition to have 5 products on the market by the end of 2022, 5 internally produced proprietary products, and I guess you're pretty close to having 3 on the market. At least 3 have been validated or registered. The next 2 I expect are the other 2 that you mentioned in the pipeline, the Pharmacept M and Pharmacept L. So you're getting very close there. How you said that that you are closing the validation stage. Does that mean that you are during 2021 you will complete the dossier to be submitted to a notified body? Is that the sort of the deadline you're working against?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to the Pharmacept M and the Pharmacept L, from a technological perspective, these build on the existing product that we have CE marked on Pharmacept S. So this is a step up on the technology foundation. So we also expect a smoother regulatory pathway because we're resting back on a lot of the data that we have already generated. We're also resting back on a lot of the clinical data generated. So yes, for Pharmacept M, we plan to file, like I say, hopefully by the end of Q2 this year, but then we expect a fairly fast path through. We also have a number of surgical units that are already interested in taking the device on. So we are in discussions with them already. So the acquisition of Pharmacept would really come in on this part. So we would start pre-marketing Pharmacept M and L this year, and we would start generating that interest at a very early stage by leveraging the brand, the Pharmacept brand that we will get the value from through the acquisition of Pharmacept. So we expect those projects to be able to launch into Europe fairly quickly after we have the CE approval.
And talking about Pharmacept, you are currently in the process of incorporating or closing that acquisition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And when do you expect that process to close?
We still remain on target for the end of Q1 as we reported, and if it were to slip, I don't think it would slip by very much. So perhaps 30 days, maybe the maximum. It's just a little bit difficult with COVID at the moment. We had planned to do an on-site due diligence to finish our due diligence with them, but then of course we were all unable to travel one way or the other. So now we're using more electronic data rooms and electronic tools. It's just taking a little bit longer, but for now we remain confident that we're on target.
And the company Pharmacept, they are your distributors for Pharmacept S at the moment, and they also have that other product, the cytostatic cisplatin. I forgot the name. Pancreatic, that's it. But then they will also start distributing two of your next forthcoming products, and also I guess later on even Pharmacept. Yeah, that would be 4 products in total, right? Smart Gel, Smart Pan, Pharmacept M, and Pharmacept L. So that's 4 new products they will distribute. Will they cope with that, with the current setup, or do you expect there to be recruitments in that?
No, we want there to be recruitments in that. You know, one of the driving strategic reasons for purchasing Pharmacept was so that we would have an outlet for our own products. And we want to use Pharmacept as a base and a foundation in order to grow our own sales organization. And Germany is a good foothold for us from a European perspective, which is our primary market. So we would like to add people into that. So our plan is to add 1 or 2 people, salespeople, into Pharmacept as we grow the product base that we put into the portfolio in Berlin.
And the 1 or 2 people, that's within the time scale of this calendar year, perhaps, or is it longer?
Yeah, we're optimistic that we will be able to get these products out this year. Obviously, it depends a lot in what happens in Europe with COVID. There's no point in having folks around if we're not allowed to visit the hospitals and talk to the doctors and access the end user. So we're keeping an eye on how quickly we can get out of lockdown, and then we have some candidates already lined up that we would like to push through there.
All right. I don't have any more questions on my list. So if anybody in the audience has a final question, you're welcome to write that. I want to congratulate you on the report. It was quite a lot better than our expectation, and even though you introduced the report by saying that you have a drop in revenues, it's actually I think you explained it well. It's because the royalties for 2019 were all lumped into Q4. So correcting for that is actually a very nice increase. So from our side as analysts, we think it's a very good report. I can't see any more questions. Do you have anything to add before we close, Justin or Petra?
No, just to say thank you for hosting us, and we look forward to doing it again in the next quarter.
So do I. Thanks very much. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Petra. And thank you everybody who has been listening.
Great. Thanks, Alf. Bye.
Bye-bye.